Hi guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to make this monster suit for Boo from Monsters Inc. And you're going to need a total of 263 bands, give or take, to make the suit. First, we're going to make the parts for the suit, and then we'll knit the suit together using just the hook. So this is what yours should look like in the end. So let's get started. We're going to take a single white band and loop it 4 times on a hook. Taking a single black band, twist double, and pulling all the white loops onto our single black band that we doubled. Now take a single purple, twist double it, and getting the eyes onto the single we doubled. And we'll do this a total of 6 times, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure it's centered. 5, and 6. And for our eyeball, we're going to take a single white band and just cap it off around the white of our eye to make the eyeball, and pull out the black. So there's the tip of our eye, and we can even take a single purple and cap it off under that to create the bottom of the eyeball. And this might get messed up once we try to put it on our head later, but we can always fix it when we're done. And take it off the hook and put it aside. Now we're going to tie 8 knots for our teeth, and I'm going to use the loom. It's easier for me. So on my loom, I'm going to take a single band, loop it once on the second peg from the bottom, twist to the left, creating an X, twist to the right, and looping it back onto the second peg from the bottom. Then on the left side, pulling the bottom band up and over to the center, and repeat for the other bottom band to create our knot. Again, if you don't have a loom, create your knot however you can. You just need to make a knot on a single band. So I'm going to do one more on the loom and pause the video to create your 8 knots. And come back when you're done. So those are my 8 knots for my teeth for my monster suit. And now I'm going to make the hair for the top of my monster suit. And here I added 5. And you can add as many as you want. I'm going to add 6 this time. So I already made 5 of them, and I'll show you how to make one. It's really easy. It's just a single chain. We're taking a single band, looping it 4 times on the hook, taking a single band and pulling those loops onto the single band, and we'll create a single chain, 6 loops long. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are the hair for my monster suit. And now let's make the arms and the legs. taking a single band, looping it 4 times on the hook, taking a single band, and pulling those loops onto the single band. And make sure you pause the video after each part to make all your different parts so that way you're caught up with me. So this is our leg, taking 2 single bands and pulling the loops off of the hook and onto the 2 single bands, and taking 2 more single bands, pulling the 2 loops off and onto a hook like that. Once again, I'm only making one of each because I already made one. You'll have to pause the video to make the second one. Now for the arm, we'll do it a little longer, pretty much the same, taking a single band, looping it 4 times on a hook, taking a single band, getting it off of a hook and onto the single band, taking another single band to make our arm longer. Now taking 2 single bands, we'll do this twice. Two more single bands, and I always flip it forward so my band doesn't twist when I get it back onto my hook. And my last set, I'm taking 3 single bands. So I had a cap band, I looped 4 times, single, single, 2 bands, 2 bands, and then onto 3 single bands for my arms. And so those are all my body parts. So go ahead and pause the video, make all these parts, and come back when you're done. Let's make our monster suit. First we're going to get 4 teeth onto a hook. So that's 1, getting the 2 loops for each teeth onto a hook. So I have 4 sets of teeth on my hook. Scooch it up, taking a single band, the color of my monster suit, looping it 4 times on my hook, taking a single band and pulling all those loops off of my hook and onto that single band. Next band, we're working with single bands only, pulling the loops off of my hook and onto that single band, and we'll add the teeth, pulling the teeth right onto that loop of the single band and getting the other side onto a hook. And we're going to skip 1, taking a single band, pulling the loops off of my hook and onto the single band. Loop number 4, pulling the loops off of my hook and onto the single band, and along with 1 tooth, and getting everything onto my hook like that. Skip 1 again. We're only creating single chain right now. Now our 6th loop, pulling the loops off of my hook and onto the single band, and then pulling the 3rd tooth onto that single band. So that's what yours should look like. It's on the 2nd, 4th, and 6th. Right now, our teeth, the 7th single, the 8th one, we'll put our last tooth, pulling it off of the hook and onto that single band, and getting our tooth onto there. So that's what yours should look like at this point with 8 single loops. We'll do this 3 more times for a total of 11 loops. So that's 1, 2, 3. So I have 11 total loops. with 4 teeth on it. And now we're going to put a hook through the cap band, and there should be 4 loops. Getting it onto a hook like that. Make sure that our teeth are on the outside. Taking a single band and pulling all the loops off of a hook and onto that single band. So this is starting our head. Now taking a single band, and we'll create a single chain, and we'll do that twice. So that's once, twice. So that's what yours should look like. Now you are going to make the second row for our Monstersuit. So grabbing the inside 2 loops onto a hook. So we have 4 loops on a hook. Grabbing a single band and getting the 2 loops in the front off of a hook and onto the single band. We still have 4 loops, and this will be the pattern. Taking another single band and pulling all the 4 loops onto that single band, leaving us with 2 loops. So that's one set. So going to the next loop, don't go into the same one. We're going to the next one that has the teeth or the tooth on it. Putting our hook through, getting the 2 loops onto a hook, and once again repeating the pattern, taking a single band for this set, pulling that single band through the 2 loops off of our chain and onto a hook, creating 4 loops. Taking our next 2 bands and pulling all 4 loops onto that single band. That finishes our second set. And again, this is row number 2. Let's go to the next loop in our chain. So we're not going to go to that same one. Skip to the next one. Putting a hook through. We have 4 loops on a hook. Taking a single band, getting the 2 front loops off of the hook and onto the single band, leaving us with 4 loops. And taking a single band and pulling the loops off of a hook and onto the single band, leaving us with 2 loops. I changed the background so you can see better. So let's repeat the same pattern, going to the next loop, putting a hook through, getting 4 loops onto a hook, grabbing a single band for this first set, and getting it onto a hook, leaving us once again with 4 loops. In each set we're adding 2 single bands. So our second band for this set, getting all the 4 loops off of a hook and onto the single band. And I'm going to continue all the way around to the other side, just repeating that same pattern. My last loop, putting my hook through, getting the 4 loops onto my hook with my single band and my last single band, pulling the 4 loops off of my hook and onto the single band, and you have 2 loops left. So now let's connect this row together, row number 2. So here's the loop where it's connected to the cap band that we have 4 loops. So 1, 2, put a hook through, grabbing our single band and pulling all 4 loops off of our hook and onto that single band. So row number 2 is done. So that's what yours should look like. Let's start row number 3, same thing, taking a single band, and we'll create a chain, 2 loops up. So that's what yours should look like. And let's work on row number 3, and we're going to skip every other one. So we're going to skip that loop where our chain is for the 3rd row and putting it into the next loop. Like that, getting the 2 bands onto a hook, grabbing our single band for our set, pulling the loops off of our hook and onto that single band, leaving 4 loops on a hook. And our last band for this set, pulling all 8 loops off of our hook and onto the single band. So we're left with 2 loops, and just repeat the pattern for every other loop. So I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to skip to the next one, taking a single band for this set and getting the front 2 loops off of a hook and onto the single band, leaving us with 4 loops, and then pulling the 4 loops off of our hook and onto the single band. So that's what yours should look like. And once again, skip 1, go to the next one, and repeating the same pattern. If you're confused, then please watch the tutorial before trying. It's the same pattern over and over again. Skipping a loop, going to the next one, get a single band, pulling the front 2 loops off of our hook and onto the single band, leaving us with 4 loops, taking a single band and pulling all 4 loops off of our hook and onto the single band. Just continue around, always skipping 1. So I'm here towards my last loop, going to put my hook through, and just eye your Monstersuit, and if it's too big or too small, skip a row or add a row. And you can adjust it to the way you want your Monstersuit to be. Finishing my last set for row number 3, and then closing up this row by putting my hook through the 1, 2, the 2nd loop, getting my single band, and getting all 4 loops off of my hook and onto that single band. So here's the top or the head for a Monstersuit right now, and let's do a loose slip knot because we want to add the hair and we want that on a hook. So do a loose slip knot, make sure it doesn't come apart, and getting our hair, getting all the loops onto a hook. I have 6 of them. So you should have 12 loops if you're doing 6 hair on the head. Now undo our loose slip knot, getting the loops back onto a hook like that, taking a single band, Now on the top of our monster suit, the hole up top of the head, we're going to put a hook through the first loop, getting the 2 loops on a hook. So we have 4 purple loops on a hook. Taking a single band, and we're going to pull all 4 purple loops off of our hook and onto that single band along with 1 hair. And flip the hair to the outside and getting the 2 loops onto our hook. Now let's go to the next loop on the top of our suit, putting a hook through, getting the 2 loops onto our hook, taking a single band, once again pulling all 4 purple loops off of our hook and onto that single band along with a hair, flipped it to the back and getting the loops onto a hook. So you should always end up with 2 loops on a hook, the purple color band. Go to the next loop, once again getting the 2 loops onto a hook, creating 4 purple loops, taking a single band, getting the 4 purple loops off of a hook along with a hair, flip it to the back and getting the loops onto our hook. And continue around the top of our suit the same way. And for the very end, and if you have more loops than you need, then let's just go ahead and go to the loop right next to the loop where we put our first hair, because we want to cinch it up anyways. Get the 2 loops onto our hook, grabbing our single band and pulling all the loops off of our hook and getting our last hair onto that single band. And let's tie a slip knot. So that's the hair on the top of our monster suit. And for the slip knot band, we just open it up and pull the hair through to secure our slip knot band. So there's the top of the head for our monster suit. And now let's add the eyes. Here are the teeth. I'm going to add it right there in the center on these 2 rows. So one side, I'm going to grab a few loops onto my hook like that. Taking my eye, grabbing one side of the 2 loops onto my hook, getting the other side onto my finger. So that's what yours should look like. And pulling the loops through off of a hook. So that's what yours should look like, and we're going to tie a slip knot, getting the loops onto our hook and pulling the back 2 loops over the front to secure our eye onto our suit. And then we're going to pull these 2 loops and pull our eye through to secure our slip knot band and to secure our eye onto our suit. So my eye came off a little bit, the top of my eye. That's okay, we can fix it later. Let's put the other eye onto our suit. For the other eye, we're going to follow in between the first and the second tooth, up our head, putting a hook through some loops. It doesn't matter as long as it's near the hair. getting our eye once again, the 2 loops on one side onto a hook, getting the other 2 loops very carefully onto our finger. So that's what yours should look like, and pulling the loops off of our hook and onto the bands where the eyes are connected, and getting the 4 loops from our eye onto our hook, pulling the back 2 loops over the front. And now you've tied the eyes to the top of our monster suit, and once again split it open and tuck our eye in to secure our eye onto our head. And we can reposition the eye later. And now let's connect the head to the body, flipping it so the hair's towards us and the eyes facing down. We're going to put a hook through these 2 loops, the one next to the tooth, not in the same loop, getting the 2 loops onto a hook, taking a single band, and we're going to create a single chain. So getting the 2 loops off of a hook and onto our single band, so we have 2 loops onto our hook again, going to the next loop, grabbing the 2 loops off of our head. Now we have 4 loops on a hook, taking a single band and pulling all 4 loops off of our hook. And once again we're left with 2 loops on a hook, going to the next loop on our head, grabbing the 2 loops along the back of our head. We have 4 loops on a hook, grabbing a single band and getting all 4 loops off of a hook and onto a hook. So that's 1, 2, 3. Let's do one more to attach to our head. Once again, we're going to put a hook through the next loop on the back of our monster's head, getting 4 loops onto a hook, grabbing a single band and pulling all 4 loops off of a hook and getting the 2 loops back onto the hook from the single band. So that's 4 single bands, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do 5, 6, and let's tie a loose slip knot and get the other 4 teeth onto our hook. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the bottom 4 teeth for our monster suit. Now back to our single chain for the bottom of our suit, getting the 2 loops back onto a hook, making sure it's not twisted. So that was the 6th loop. The 7th one, we're going to add our first tooth. So getting the single loop, pulling the 2 purple loops off of our hook, and putting a tooth onto that single band, and getting the loops onto a hook. Let's skip 1, so that's 7. This is 8. 9, we'll put our tooth. Once again, pulling the purple loops off of our hook and onto the single band and getting the tooth onto that single band. Loop number 10, we'll put another tooth on loop number 11, same thing, getting all the bands onto the single band, the 11th band, and getting the 2 loops onto our hook. Loop number 12, we're skipping. Loop number 13, we'll add our last tooth. And let's add 2 more single bands to create 15 loops. So that's 14, 15. So there's our single chain for the bottom of our suit, and we're going to make sure our teeth is facing upwards towards the top of the mouth, and we're going to loop back towards where we started this first row for the bottom of our suit. So if your hook is awkward, take it off, reposition the loops onto your hook, and grabbing the 2 loops from where we started this row and taking a single band and pulling all 4 loops off of a hook and onto that single band. So that was row number 1 for the bottom of our suit. Now take a single band and create a single loop to start this row number 2. So that's what yours should look like. And now go to the next loop. So not this one, this next one, putting a hook through, grabbing the 2 loops onto a hook, creating 4 loops. And let's repeat the pattern. Grabbing a single band, getting the front 2 loops onto the single band, leaving us with 4 loops, and then taking our last band for the set, pulling the 4 loops off of a hook and onto that single band. And continuing, repeating my same pattern. And now let's tie a loose slip knot. Let's get our arms onto our hook. So careful not to let it come off. Getting our arms, getting the 6 loops onto a hook. Let's get both arms on there. So that's what it should look like. And let's undo our loose slip knot once again. And for this loop, the second loop before our tooth, we're going to add our arm, so getting the 2 loops onto a hook, leaving us with 4 loops of the purple band, grabbing a single band and pulling the front 2 loops off of a hook and onto that single band. It's the same pattern, finishing our set with a single band, pulling all 4 loops off of a hook, and then pulling our arms off of a hook and onto that single band. So that's what yours should look like. And for the front of our monster suit, I'm going to skip every other loop. So I'm going to skip this one and grabbing the 2 loops underneath our tooth, our first tooth, getting the 2 loops onto our hook, and repeating the same pattern for each set. Skip one, go underneath the other tooth, making sure the teeth are facing upwards towards the top of our mouth. And repeating the same pattern. Don't go too far. We want to add our second arm. I'm going to add it to the other side near the other tooth, the last tooth. So skipping one, going under the last tooth, grabbing my single band onto my hook, pulling all the loops off of my hook and onto the single band. And let's just go into the loop right next to that last tooth, putting my hook through, going to add our second arm here, doing the same thing for this set. And before we close it up, onto a hook, pulling the arms onto that single band and getting the loops onto a hook. Like that. Let's go to the next loop. Repeat the same pattern, and this is the last one before we cinch up row number 2 for our body. So we're back to where we started our second row. So I'm counting up 1, 2, grabbing the 2 loops onto my hook, have 4 loops onto my hook, and then pulling all 4 loops to close up row number 2. So that's what your monster suit should look like right now. And let's start row number 3, creating a single chain. We'll just do it with a single band like that. So that's where we close up row number 2 and adding a single band to create a single chain. I'm just going to go in the loop right next to it and repeat the same pattern, adding 2 bands for each set. And I'm going to do it for every single loop along my monster suit. Almost back to where we started row number 3. Do the last loop past the arm. Finishing up our set. And closing up row number 3. So there's our monster suit so far. Let's continue row number 4. To start, once again, adding a single band. And let's skip this one and go to the next one. Try to reduce a little bit towards our feet, repeating our same pattern to continue. You can make your suit longer or bigger if you want. It's up to you. We're back to where we started our row, finishing up my set and cinching up my row. So that was row number 4 for our monster suit, and row number 5 started by adding a single band to create our single chain, and we're going to reduce some more. So skipping this one, grabbing the next loop, and repeating the same pattern for the set. I'm going to skip one, grabbing the next loop, skip one, grab the next loop, skip one. You can't go wrong with your suit. If you mess up, just undo it. It's really easy. So we're back to where we started this row. It's a little hard to tell, but here's where we start. So we're back to where we started this row. Let's hear where we cinch off row number 4. So let's count 1, 2. Let's cinch off row number 5. So there's my monster suit so far. And let's do a loose slip knot to get our feet onto a hook. Getting the 4 loops onto a hook for both legs. Let's undo, or both feet, undo our loose slip knot. For row number 6, we're going to cinch it off. So make your suit as long as you want, and when you're ready to close it off. And here's the front of my body for my suit. So I'm going to skip this loop and go to the next one, getting the 2 loops off of my suit and onto my hook. So I have 4 purple loops onto my hook, grabbing a single band and pulling all 4 loops off of my hook. And here's a good place to add one of my foot. So I'm taking the 4 loops for my feet and getting it onto the single band. So I'm trying to cinch up, so I'm skipping one, go to the next one. Once again, just grabbing the single band and pulling all 4 loops off of my hook and onto that single band. Again, skip one, go to the next one, and pulling all 4 loops off of the hook and onto that single band. So we're going to skip this loop, go to the next one, grabbing the 2 loops off of the bottom of our suit. Now we have 4 loops on a hook, getting our single band and pulling all 4 loops off of a hook and attaching our foot onto that single band. And let's cinch it off, going to the loop near the other foot, getting the loops onto our hook, and getting our single band and pulling all the loops off of our hook and onto that single band. Now we're going in between the legs and cinching up the hole at the bottom of our suit. So we're just going to grab the loop on the other side of our suit, the back side of our suit, and getting 4 loops onto a hook, taking a single band and getting 4 loops, the 4 loops off of our hook and onto our single band. And let's do it one more time, getting the loops onto a hook. I'm taking 2 from the front, 2 from the back to cinch up the bottom of our monster suit. So we have 6 loops on the hook at this point, getting a single band and getting all 6 loops off of the hook and onto that single band, and let's tie a slip knot. Tuck in that slip knot band to hide it in our suit. And at this point you can fix the teeth and the eyes and everything to the way you want it to look, and even the hair. If you want it to droop more in the face area, then you might want to tuck it in from the top. You can make a little girl dress-up doll into Boo and stuff her inside your monster suit and push her head in there. It's a little snug, but there she is. So there's your monster suit for Boo from Monsters, Inc. I hope you like it. Thanks for watching.